Welcome to Deeper with Darshana, where we skip the small talk and dive down into what's raw and real. Pleasure, shame, justice, power, healing, liberation. These essential aspects of our human experience are among my favorite topics to explore, and I'm inviting you to join me. I'm your host, Darshana Avila, somatic sex and trauma expert and creator of the Erotic Wholeness Method. It is my belief that we are erotic by nature, and our erotic nature encompasses so much more than you might realize. Come along as I drop into curious conversations with other passionate pros and sensual seekers, and occasionally share musings of my own. Bring your curiosity, your sacred, messy, beautiful humanity, and all the parts of yourself. And let's go deeper together. Hey, y'all. Today we are talking about a P word. You want to guess which one? It's perimenopause. Yep, that's a big topic of conversation. And you get to listen in to me and Kristen Timchak of the Nervous Nourish System go deep into the wisdom of Ayurveda, which is one of the things that she has a lot of deep experience with, and how understanding these shifts in the cycles and seasons and rhythms of our body through an Ayurvedic lens can help us to bring more balance and vitality, pleasure, aliveness, all that goodness as we are cycling through these changes. It was so much fun to have this conversation because Ayurveda was a part of my life back in my 20s when I was first exploring yoga, and I feel like I got kind of far away from it. This invited me back to recognize that this could be a huge source of support as I'm going into the back half of my 40s. I trust that you're going to love it, so listen in. Welcome back to Deeper with Darshana. Today, I am so excited to be in conversation with Kristen, who is a board-certified Ayurvedic health counselor, resilience coach, somatic stress release practitioner, Ayurvedic yoga specialist, and a human doing her best humaning in this world, which honestly I think is the best that any of us can be doing. So it's going to be a delight to talk with Kristen today about helping you connect to your own life force, getting in tune with the cycles and seasons of nature and your own body, and how you can cultivate more resilience and vibrancy in your life, which are definitely things that I am interested in. So that's why you and I get to be here having this conversation today. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm honored and just thrilled to get to be here with you.
And so, okay, for those listening, we met because I came on to Kristen's podcast and we just totally hit it off. And I don't remember if I shared this with you or not, Kristen, but yoga and Ayurveda were like a very formative part of my journey in terms of spirituality and embodiment. And so I love that that is such a big part of the wisdom that you're carrying. I'd love to begin with a little of your background and how these became a part of your journey.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can trace it all back to being a little kid, but I'm not going to go back that far for the sake of a podcast conversation. But really, my my practice really started with yoga when I was about 19 or 20 years old, which quickly led into Ayurveda. And I've been studying Ayurveda since then. I've done lots of trainings, and it's been a part of my path for a long time. It's been a thread that's woven through everything. But I would say over the past, I guess 6 years ago, I had a child at the age of 42, and I came into this period of my life where I had all of this knowledge. I was studying Ayurveda, herbs, somatic work, all of these things, but all of a sudden I came into this really deficit period of my life where I had a lot of big stuff happen in my life. I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, and my mother died. Like there's a bunch of like financial stuff going on. There's just a lot happening in this period. And I find myself in this place of crisis. And I just started, what do I want to say? I just started to tap back in to this knowledge that I have from Ayurveda, but really seeing it from this different lens of, okay, I can have this knowledge, but how do I implement this every single day? And
Can I pause you to just define Ayurveda for someone
yes,
who maybe is listening? Because I realize I just launched it and I'm like, I know what you're talking about, but people may not.
that's a good point. Yes. Yes. So Ayurveda is a system of medicine. It originated in India thousands of years ago. It was transmitted through meditation to rishis who are meditating in caves, and there's these downloads. But it's this really practical medicine because it's all about life. Ayur means life, Veda means the science of or study of, and it's basically studying life and recognizing that we are a part of nature. We're not separate from it. So what's happening out in nature, all of those cycles and seasons that are happening, they're all also happening in our lives and in our bodies. And so that's kind of the basic essence of it. And there, it can get very complicated, but can also just be as simple as listening to your body, noticing what's happening. We say like increases like and opposites balance. So noticing what's happening and then noticing the qualities of what's happening and then either increasing it or decreasing it depending on what you're trying to find balance.
Right. And when you're talking about like increasing and balancing, what I remember, and my knowledge of Ayurveda doesn't necessarily run as deep, but that a lot of it has to do with how the elements show up in your body. And so air and water and earth, which is similar to Chinese medicine, which some people might have familiarity with. And this idea that we can get out of balance with those elements within ourselves, to me, just makes so much sense. You know, like the idea of what you're saying, like we are nature. We're not separate. We're not outside. We're not above. We are made up of the very same stuff. And so these seasonal shifts, these cycles and rhythms, and also the imbalances that can occur. Yeah, it's just that we would have a wisdom body that could guide us to calibrate well. I don't know. My brain wraps around that with ease. I hope the listeners feel that too. So yeah, this is such a cool thing to get to talk about how your motherhood journey and all these big movements going on in your life brought you to, it sounds like, take this like more esoteric wisdom body and make it more practical. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. It helped me to, I think, just realizing, well, first of all, before having a child, I had lots of time if I wanted to do a yoga practice or a meditation practice or all these different ways to take care of myself, time in nature. And then after having a child, a lot of that dropped off. And so for me, it was this practice of coming back and recognizing I don't need to have this big, huge amount of time. I just need to do small things consistently. And doing those small things consistently actually has made such a huge, huge difference in my health and in my life and in my balance and in my nervous system.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love hearing that because I get asked the question a lot. I actually was literally just on another podcast today talking about this idea of like, particularly those who are parenting young children and don't have a lot of time. What are the ways that you can center yourself and take good care of yourself and feel connected to yourself as a sovereign being beyond your role of mother or parent? So I love that this is in the field today because I think a lot of people don't see a way to do that, and it can be incredibly frustrating, and then things just compound on themselves.
Yeah, exactly. I think one of the things I love about Ayurveda is this idea that, like nature, we're always changing. We're always going through these different cycles and seasons. And so I think if we hold on to this idea that we're static, that we always have to do things the same all the time, that the way we did things in our 20s is the way we do it in our 30s, in our 40s, in our 50s, then we can get into a lot of imbalance. But I think when we can recognize that we're in different stages of our lives and adjust our life, our self-care, our diet, all these things to those different stages, it can really be such a rich way to move through life, and it helps us to not get stuck.
100%. And this certainly, you know, in the realm of eroticism, sexuality, desire, this is a conversation that we're having all the time where I think the cultural narrative has many of us despairing of change in our physical bodies, the shape and the feel of them, change in our libido, change in the ways we want or do not want intimacy. And so this idea that, like, you know, our culture loves perpetual youth and that things should always be how they are at their prime really does us a massive disservice because it's just not honoring those natural fluctuations.
Yeah, exactly. I really feel that. I'm in an interesting place in my life right now because I have a 6-year-old, but yet I'm also entering into this perimenopause stage of life. And it's like everything's kind of crazy. I'm like mother and moving into crone at the same exact time. But this perimenopause stage has felt really rich in really bringing in the Ayurvedic wisdom that this is a change of stage of life. Because I think, like you said, we're obsessed with youth. We're obsessed with in Ayurveda what we call like Pitta dosha, which is made up of the fire and water elements, and it's like a constitutional type that's about fire. It's about drive. It's about go. It's about success and getting things done and motivation and that spark and that drive for life. And the Pitta time of life is from puberty to menopause. And so we're really obsessed with this time of life that we sometimes don't honor these other stages that we're in.
I feel that. So, okay, you led right where I was excited for us to go, which is the acknowledgement of like, yeah, here you are, newish mother. I mean, a 6-year-old is a 6-year-old, and also newish mother and perimenopause. I'm over here not being a mother, and perimenopause is working me like left, right, and center. So I guess let's start with this. I know that some of us have a lack of clarity about how do we know that we're in perimenopause? It's not just about you are a certain age. You know, I'm aware of people who have gone and had hormonal tests in their early 30s that showed you are actually perimenopausal right now, and people who don't enter menopause until their late 50s. So there's a range as far as age goes. From an Ayurvedic perspective, what are the things that you're going to start to notice as perimenopause is coming online? And is it accurate to say that as that pitta, that fiery stage of life is kind of winding down or tapering off? Like, is that an apt description for it?
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to talk about the seasons a little bit,
Sure.
to lead into some of this. But so in Ayurveda, so there's 3 doshas. Pitta is that fire stage. It's that middle time of life. And Kapha is the childhood, and that's earth and water. So if you think of children, it's springtime. It's that like moistness, that aliveness, that vibrancy, the growing period of time. Pitta comes, it's that fire, drive, do life, get everything going. And then Vata time is air and space. And so air and space, everything is starting to thin out, dry out. Mm-hmm. And it's that journey towards completion. You know, it's that if we think about the seasons of the year, fall and winter, everything's drying out, everything's slowing down, everything's getting more spacious, more subtle. And so that's what's happening in our bodies in those times of life. And so perimenopause is this time that's like, here in New England, it might be like early September. It's that time where it's still technically summer. Summer is until September 21st. So it's technically summer, but you're starting to feel fall come in. You're starting to feel this change of seasons happening. Vata, the air and the space, is starting to come in. So there's some more erratic qualities. Things are getting a little bit drier. Things are getting lighter. There can be lots of changes happening during that time. It could be hot one day and cold the next. Yeah. And so that's kind of like perimenopause. So, So just to have our terms, so we're on the same page with terms, menopause is when you've not had a menstrual cycle for a year. So your last menstrual cycle was a year ago, and that's considered stepping through into menopause. And so perimenopause is this time before where the estrogen is starting to change, it's starting to lessen, and you're moving into that menopause stage, but you're not at menopause yet. Menopause is like a moment in time, and then it's post-menopause is after that. Mm-hmm. And so perimenopause is this stage where everything is changing, and Ayurveda sees it not as a degeneration or a disorder or something that's wrong. It's actually our body is changing the way that it's using energy. We're going from using our energy for reproduction to this like refinement, or this shift of metabolism and hormones to like the wisdom years, to being grandmothers or grandparents in whatever way that you
or not, but
or not, but taking that role in society, even if you're not physically having children, it's that role of
like elderhood, right?
yeah,
Like where you're, yeah,
yeah, elder, sharing wisdom, sharing like what you've learned to help to guide your community. So Ayurveda sees it as a refinement, and you can tell that you're in it. There's a few things. There's so many symptoms, and it's going to look different for different people. But some big things are what we call Agni in Ayurveda, which is your fire, your digestive fire, or your metabolism. Your metabolism, your digestive fire starts to shift. It can start to get erratic in one way or another. Rasa, which is like lymph, hydration, the kind of juiciness, can start to dry out at this time, because if you think about vata, it's the wind in the space. It can blow that juiciness and start to make things drier. And then our prana, our energy, our nervous system starts to shift. Like you might start noticing waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning.
I've been doing that for several years now.
Yeah.
I think we've got a whole club who's awake in those wee hours of the morning.
Yeah.
Certainly. Yeah.
Yeah, we could have a perimenopause call at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and people would be on it.
Yeah. I somebody's probably got to be marketing that already, I swear.
Right?
Yeah. And, I want to circle back though to how you spoke of perimenopause as more of a season, post-menopause as a season, but menopause is really like a moment. And I like that distinction, because seasons also have their own, as you were saying, like their own fluctuations and changes. And the wisdom that comes through this, certainly how I've experienced it in my body, and I'm seeing it with a lot of my clients and the people that I support, is because we are moving toward that elder wisdom, and as you said, our energy isn't so much on procreation, but a different form of creativity and vitality. I also, it's the giving less fucks phenomenon is what I see so much of, and an access to our discernment that really is such a hugely empowering thing if you let it be. So I think a lot of us are afraid, and like all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait a minute, I don't like these things that I used to like before. That's a problem. And what if I've been going along with something that I never really liked, or I liked it then and I don't like it now. And the honoring of this is a beautiful source of personal power, and me really claiming something essential about myself right now. So that's what I think is so cool about this season that we get to move through of perimenopause and into postmenopause. Like it's just way more agency becomes available to us.
Yes, 100% everything that you just said. Yes. Yeah, it's a transition of power. It's not a diminishing. Like I think in our culture, there's this thing of like, after 40, you're invisible, or, these tropes that go around that diminish a midlife woman's presence in the world. And I think I want to like reframe that. I want to take it back, that this is a transition of power. And like you said, we're moving from being like estrogen dominant, where there's this mothering, whether you're a mother or not, but this giving, sometimes at the expense of self. Yes. And then when that starts to diminish, it's like literally the hormone haze is fading, and you're like waking up to, oh, wait, that's actually not
right. I don't want to keep overextending myself. I don't want to keep abandoning myself in order to try to please somebody else. I mean, and sometimes it's super benevolent. This is where people pleasing can be so pernicious, because of course you want to take good care of your children. Of course you want to show up for the people you care about. You want to be a good partner. There's incentive to people please. And also there's a real shadow of it when we're continually abandoning and betraying ourselves. And this is the time of life when many of us, it's like all of a sudden, I like that you use that description, like the haze, the hormone haze, like lifts. It's like, whoa, I can see clearly now.
Totally. Yes. It's like walking through a doorway.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that we don't have a lot of rites of passage either in our culture. And I think this is a moment of like a rite of passage. It's like whether you've had children or not, it doesn't matter. You've gone from this phase where your body physically wants to reproduce, whether that's creating business, create whatever you've created in your life. It doesn't have to be children, but to something where there's a more internal focus and an ability, like the veil gets thinner and you're able to access wisdom in a different way.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned rites of passage, because that's something I feel really strongly about, which is to say the absence of them in our modern Western culture, and some people may be carrying forward their own ancestral lineages and certain rituals and routines, or they've adopted others. And that's more me. Like I've found my way into all manner of spiritual paths that have helped me shape and form rites of passages for different chapters of my life. But most of us don't have that. We don't have ready access to it, and it's not woven into the fabric of our communities and our cultures. And so the biggest problem that I see is we tend to take an inordinate amount of personal responsibility for things that aren't just us. And we're not being guided into these changes and into these transformations in ways that let us feel really held and supported. And that's, I think, what makes, particularly for us it's particularly at any age and stage of life, but since we're talking about perimenopause, it's kind of like this silent, strangely, like, yeah, everyone's going through it, but we're not really demarcating this, and we're not really celebrating and honoring this, and we're certainly not supporting this change that so many of us are going through. And I just feel my own ache around that. Like it's a very visceral thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting. I read something recently that women weren't even included in clinical trials for things in medicine until the 90s. So women's bodies just have not been studied. The women's hormones were considered too complicated. So there's,
Did you read this in the book Eve? I'm sorry.
I haven't.
Oh my God, because this is total. Okay, you have to read this book. And okay, great book. I'm so sorry. I'm totally jumping on top of you, but Eve.
Oh, it's okay.
It is a beautiful, like, historic, scientific, anthropological treatise on how the female body shaped 200 million years of human evolution, and the fact that we haven't been included in most of the studies.
Yes, I'm going to read it. I want to read it. Yes. Yeah. But it's just like, there's this way that culturally we're not, there's not a lot of awareness around it. I think perimenopause, I don't know, when I was growing up, I didn't even hear that word. I feel like it's even a more recent term that I'm hearing. And so I think there's more and more awareness happening around this change, but there's also a lot of negativity around it because it can be uncomfortable. There's a lot of parts of it that are hard, but that's why I see it kind of like a portal. It's like this season, this portal, this doorway that we're walking through from one phase to a new phase. And we all know, if you've ever like moved house or moved to a different state or anything like that, moved to a different job, it can be rocky. There's parts of it that are hard. There's imbalance that comes up. There's things that are uncomfortable. It brings up our nervous system. It brings up all of our stuff. And I think the same thing happens in this phase. But like you said, if we can hold it with some reverence and really see the beauty of it and really see this as a time of life that's like truly special and bringing us to, I want to say, like an upgrade almost, because they are seeing studies showing that after a certain amount of time in postmenopause, that our brains do stabilize, that things do stabilize in this way. So like the brain fog, the memory, those kinds of things in some studies are shown to be temporary, that this is just a temporary part of this phase of life, but we're moving to something else, and we can honor it even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate that, like you naming that. Like we talk a lot about the things that are uncomfortable nowadays, certainly compared to in the past. And same, like I'm trying to remember if I ever heard my mother mention perimenopause. I don't remember her mentioning menopause, to be honest, but she's no longer alive and I don't get to fact check that with her. And I do feel confident that like it's a generational thing where right now, those of us who are in our middle years are going through these experiences with an unprecedented level of dialogue and insight and information, which is awesome. And as we kind of tend to do, the collective we, there's a lot of hyperfixation around everything that's negative about it. And sometimes I'm even perpetuating that, right? Like complaining about the sleep and like the itchiness and the dryness and this, that, and the other. Also, I love that we're getting to talk about the gifts that come of the wisdom that's available, the personal power. From an Ayurvedic perspective, is there anything else like in particular that this chapter of life denotes or includes or that you focus in on, and things that people can do to enhance those positive experiences as they're going through their perimenopause to postmenopause journey?
Well, something that I think about with those things that you're talking about, because that's real, the sleeplessness, the itchiness, like all of those things are real and a part of the experience. And we think of that in Ayurveda as it's imbalance. It's just some imbalances that have come up. And something that's been helpful for me in looking at it is looking at the imbalances through the lenses of Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Okay. So we can look at if somebody is experiencing their cycles are getting erratic, they're experiencing gas, constipation, maybe like the digestion is going from constipation to diarrhea, some, erratic qualities are happening. If their skin is getting drier, hair is getting drier, everything is just drying out. Everyone's going to have some amount of that because we're moving into Vata time of life. But if you have a lot of that, a lot of the 3 o'clock in the morning wake up, there could be more Vata dosha, which is the air and space. And so the qualities of that are light, dry, cold, subtle, mobile. So when you can balance those qualities with oil, warmth, routine to sort of give the wind, we're not going to stop the wind ever, but we can give the wind a container so it's not just going crazy, so that it has some rhythm to it. That can be really helpful for that type of perimenopause experience. And then
now I want all the particulars. I'm like, well, what oil should I be using? How should I be? Because I mean, those wake ups are have been the most troublesome part. I know for me, it's because sleep is everything.
Yeah. I mean, I think really like prioritizing sleep. I mean, that could be a whole other episode on just sleep, but yes, I'm just going to get into the Pitta and Kapha, and then we can talk about more specifics. But yeah, so for Pitta people, maybe they, or someone who has some Pitta imbalance, they might notice more heat, more hot flashes, more indigestion, acid reflux types of things, inflammation in the joints, things like that. So that's more of the heat. So they want to cool things down a little bit. Everyone is dry now. Everyone wants to work on hydration and oil and those types of things. But for Pitta, they also want to work on cooling the inflammation. And that could be with herbs, that could be lifestyle things. But just noticing if you tend towards the anger and irritability, that can be a big thing for Pitta. And everyone's going to have a mix of these things. Like it's not, for most people, it's not like just one. But then for Kapha, which is earth and water, which is more heavy, cold, stagnant, slow, steady, people might notice more of weight gain, of like just like a slow digestion. Their digestive fire gets really slow. They're not hungry very much. They can eat a tiny bit and just be fine. They might notice more brain fog, lethargy, things like that. And so for those people, we want to give a little bit of motivation, a little spice, some ginger, some maybe not as much oil, maybe more like sauna or things to heat and warm, more physical activity, things like that. So that's kind of just a little window of how to sort of
Yes.
balance things.
I'm hearing there are a lot of options, but not all options apply to everyone, because
Right.
we really need to have a better understanding of what is going on in our body and where the balance and imbalance is.
Right.
So maybe that's the next question, is how would someone learn? Like, if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't have a freaking clue about this Vata Pitta stuff, like, where can you go to get some foundational guidance so that you can take advantage of the kind of wisdom that you're sharing?
I mean, there's so much out there. I have an Ayurveda 101 free, it's actually a free class on this really amazing website called The Portal, which is like this very cool collective like course creation website. But I have a free class there. There's lots of books.
We will make sure to
Vasant
find the class in the show notes for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. There's a teacher named Vasant Lad that has a lot of stuff out there. There's Claudia Welch is an amazing, especially if you're really wanting to get deeper into the hormones aspect of it. Claudia Welch has done a ton with hormones. I also have like an Ayurveda, which I can also send you the link for. It's just a dosha quick reference guide. So it has each dosha. It goes through. It's very simple, easy to see. It has all of the different qualities, all of the different parts of the body, the ways to balance it. But really, listening to your body, I think, is the biggest thing. And listening to your body, and it can be as simple as, I feel hot right now. I feel heat. Like, what? I'm not going to have more coffee or alcohol or things that are more heating. I'm going to maybe have something that's more cooling, maybe drink some coconut water. Maybe instead of going for a jog on the blacktop, I'm going to go for a swim. You know, it's just making those little tiny shifts that you can do even without a huge Ayurvedic knowledge, just noticing the qualities that are up and doing the opposite.
Yeah, yeah, which makes a ton of sense. And it brings us back to something that is really fundamental to the work I do. And I know the work you do too, like that it's so much of this is cultivating an intimacy with our own bodies and being able to hear, to listen, and to be responsive to what our body is telling us. So I love that all roads seem to come back to that. Okay. In another all roads lead to moment, I want to talk about sex, and I want to talk about pleasure, and I want to talk about erotic aliveness. And, you know, one of the things certainly that is the maybe number one myth of this chapter of life is, oh yeah, your sex drive's out the window, like nails in the coffin, done. And I'm here to say absolutely not true.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely 100% not true. I'm curious, again, like bringing in the wisdom of Ayurveda, if there are particular things that if someone does feel like their libido is lagging a bit and they want to move in the other direction, what is Ayurvedic wisdom around sexual health and erotic aliveness? What does that encompass?
Yeah, I say from an Ayurvedic perspective, there's a couple things. One would be, I mentioned it earlier, rasa dhatu, which is rasa. The word rasa can mean taste. It can mean essence. It can mean like juiciness. Mm-hmm. And with rasa dhatu, it's our first tissue layer that's formed after we digest our food. And it's lymph, it's plasma. It's like the liquid parts of our body. And that starts to dry out as we move through this stage of going into perimenopause and menopause. And so, I mean, just on a physical level, just getting more juiciness in your life, making sure that you're hydrated and not just drinking tons of water, but also having warm water, drinking herbal teas, things like marshmallow can help to actually lubricate the tissues of the body. You know, I think that's such a thing, is that people are not wanting to be intimate because there's like this dryness and it can be uncomfortable. So how are the ways that you can bring more lubrication, really nourish that juicy layer? And I would say that with Ayurveda is mind, body, spirit medicine. So yes, it's like there's a physical element to that, but it's also that ability to feel the waters of our emotions, the waters of feeling support in your life, feeling stability. That's also an aspect to it.
Mm-hmm.
And another piece of this, which is related, is what we call ojas, which is like your vitality. It's related to the immune system, but it's also just related to your, that like vital essence inside of yourself. And once again, it's like feeling supported, feeling stable, and feeling like you're really feeding yourself and nourishing yourself. And I would say that in order for us to be able to give and receive and be in that connection with another person in that way and be in that intimate space from an Ayurvedic perspective, it's like we want to be fully nourished in ourselves. If we're feeling dry, if we're feeling exhausted, if we're feeling like, oh my God, I've given everything, you might need to rest first. You might need to like take some time to slow down. And I think it's what we talked about earlier as well. And noting that things aren't going to look the same as they did. And that's not a bad thing. That like, as we move into this stage of life, the way that our intimacy and our eroticism looks is going to be different. And to feel that being able, if you're with a partner, being able to ask for what you need now, be able to have those conversations feels really huge. If you're not, it's just like really exploring that with yourself. Like what actually feels good right now? What, like if you get out of your mind, coming back into your body, what are the things that help you to come alive in that?
Totally. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's really what I'm hearing you say is, to summarize, it's a more expansive and permissive embrace of what nourishes us. So to your point, that could be rest and replenishment. It could be exploring new pathways to pleasure in your body. Maybe the way you want to be intimate in a partnered context or with your own self is going to look different than it did, but different isn't a bad thing. And that too, I think is a very like mental paradigm shifting thing a lot of us have to go through. Back to what we said at the start, like in our youth obsessed culture that wants everything to be in a nice little cookie cutter, like we're flying in the face of that here. And it gets to be so beautiful. I know that I'm experiencing that in my body where it's, I could say arguably like I'm in the best sex of my life stage. But that isn't simply because I'm listening and adapting accordingly. So I might not have defined this sex as the best sex when I was 32, but on the cusp of 45, I'm like, yeah, this is what feels really good. This is how I want to be nourished. My masturbation has changed. It makes me think about, yoga and Ayurveda being very closely entwined. As a yoga practitioner for upwards of 20 years now, I think about how my practice has evolved so many times over, different ages and stages of life, different emotional things that I was going through, times when I had injured myself significantly and needed to adapt my practice accordingly. It's yet another metaphor for this. Like we get to have these practices grow with us. So I'm hearing Ayurveda really offers so much wisdom so that we get to keep growing in authentic and honoring ways with ourselves.
Yes, exactly. I really love that you brought the yoga piece in, because I feel like yoga and Ayurveda is a big part of it is about connecting with our own life force. And it's about doing the things that help our life force to move freely throughout our bodies. And I think eroticism really is that. It's like being able to have your life force move freely and to feel connected to it.
Yes, yes, yes. Preach, preach, preach. That's what I'm all about. Oh, I love this. Thank you so much for sharing these bits of wisdom. And we will make sure to link that course of yours that you mentioned, because I think a lot of people are going to be really curious to learn a bit more. It's reminding me, like I first learned about Ayurveda in the early days of my yoga practice, and I got so intrigued to go down that rabbit hole. And this is serving as a reminder that I can lean into that wisdom now. So thank you on a very personal level for showing up for this conversation. Before we wind down, Kristen, I would love for folks to know where to find you and if they want to get more of the good stuff and the guidance that you offer. And then I want to see if there's any last little deeper drop that you want to leave everybody with.
Awesome. I have a website. It's www.nourishednervoussystem.com. I'm really obsessed with the nervous system as well. And I do one-on-one consultations. I do things where I incorporate somatic work in with the Ayurvedic work, which is really sweet and special. I will have some, in the coming months, I will have some yoga classes online and other course type things online. And if you're in Mid-Coast, Maine, come find me in person. I'm in the Belfast area in Mid-Coast, Maine. So yeah, and my podcast is The Nourished Nervous System if you want to check me out there.
Everything's going to be linked there. Let's nourish our nervous systems. And we've got Kristen to guide us. And again, anything else that you just want to wrap up with, a little tiny more deepness. Deepness? I think I just made up a word there.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, let me feel into it for a sec.
Absolutely. We get to relish the pause.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what's coming up is just to honor yourself in this transition. If you're in this transition, if you're even in your 30s, just kind of seeing the transition far off and you're just starting to dip your toes into it, let this be a time to start to create more rhythm. I think that's a big thing with perimenopause, is that we're moving our body's rhythm of that monthly cyclical bleeding is shifting. And so we can support ourselves by creating other rhythms in our life, whether that be rhythms with things like sleep and diet, or just rhythms with self-care or rituals, and creating your own ritual, or getting some people together who are also going through this phase to support each other and create ritual and to create that rite of passage for yourself around it could be a really beautiful.
Love that. Yes. Here's to creating the rhythms, the rituals, the supports that we all need. And I hope that those of you listening will do exactly that. We'll take this, play with it, experiment, make it your own. Kristen, thank you so much for everything you shared here today. This was really like full of gems. And for you, dear listener, if you loved what you heard, I hope you will give us a little comment, a rating, share it with somebody in your life who needs to hear this, and make sure you're subscribed so that you don't miss the next episode. We'll see you soon.